she fire FBI Director James Comey?
Well, let me tell you something. If she had won the White House, I believe that given what he did to her and what he tried to do, she should have fired him.
So she should have fired him, but he shouldn't have fired him. This is why I'm confused.
No, you're not confused.
Yes I am. Gene Baradelli behind Enemy Lines. Oh, that Maxine Waters thing gets me every time. But it's a reminder to me that Buffoon of the Year season is almost upon us. Folks, if you believe that you can pick the winner Buffoon of the Year this year, I gotta say that you're Kreskin, because there have been so many buffoons out there in 2017 that we're having a hard time just narrowing it down a field. Let's just put it this way. There's not going to be an easy out when it comes to Buffoon of the Year this year in any round whatsoever. That's a feature that we normally do at the end of the year in the month of December at www.behindenemylinesradio.us. Check us out on the internets, the social medias, the Twitters, the Facebooks, and all that stuff at BEL_radio. Thanks for listening to the show. Russell will be back next week. He's on drill this week, and I'm sure he's going to have a lot to say. But if you miss any part of this show, which we normally do live on the weekends now, which will be starting up, believe it or not, with Facebook Live also in December. We're excited about that. Like I said, check us out, www.behindenemylinesradio.us. Check us out on the Facebooks and Twitters at BEL_radio. And if you miss any part of this show, check us out on any one of our rebroadcast outlets, including WJHC 107.5 FM in Jasper, Florida, WDDQ 92.1, Talk 92.1 in Adel, Georgia, and News Talk 1330 AM, WLBB, Carrollton, Georgia, all part of the Talk America Radio Network. Shout out to our friend Ron Phillips, who's still recovering from that horrible lightning strike at his house. We hope that Talk America Radio gets up on the airwaves again soon. We love you, bro, and hope everything's good there. You can also check us out at KLRN Radio. The new name for High Plains Talk Radio, which is Lone Star News Radio and Sackheads Media. ICRN, the Internet's Conservative Radio Network. And Lanterns Radio, of course. You can always check us out at lanterns.buzz. One of the fastest growing networks out there, folks. Whole lot of fun. Like I said, Buffoon of the Year, we're going to have a lot of announcements coming out in the very near future about that. All exciting stuff, some partnerships with our sponsors and doing some new things for our audience. And we're going to try and make it the most interactive Buffoon of the Year of all time. It's our 5th or 6th year doing it. I don't even remember anymore. But we've had such illustrious winners as Al Sharpton, Anthony Weiner, Stephanie Rawlings-Blake. It's been a fun ride, folks. It truly has been. Buffoon of the Year really is the most wonderful time of the year. And like I said, you'll be hearing more about that in the days and weeks to come. By the way, if you miss any of our broadcasts on our rebroadcast outlets, you can always check us out as a podcast. We're at iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, TuneIn, Stitcher, Podbay, Player FM, Google Play Music, SoundCloud, and Auto Radio. A lot of great stuff there. You can always listen to any one of our shows available as a podcast on any one of those fine networks. I want to talk a little bit about, we laid out the cases and kind of the legal and political arguments to the whole Manafort indictment and the Papadopoulos matter of his statement of the offense and all of that. I want to go through, because I've been on social media today talking about, my reaction to this with other people. I have to say that I've tried to reach out to both sides, people who I know who are partisans on the left, partisans on the right, talking about this issue. To me, it seems like the right is taking more of a cognitive response to this, and the left is being more emotional about it. So, in response to my comments of saying, judge slowly, things that I say on this show, I'm being told that, this conspiracy against the United States isn't a tax charge. Because that's one of the things I brought up, that, a conspiracy can be, among other things, failure to pay your taxes, keeping money overseas, and things like that. If you read the indictment, that's exactly what we're talking about. So, people are looking for a big smoking gun here. I'm looking at comments right now from friends' feeds who are on the left. I tell people to read the documents, and they say, that's why they surrendered and pleaded guilty. Haha, I cannot. And, I have to point out that the facts of the matter. I don't think anybody's interested in facts. This is an emotional reaction from the left. Must I spell it out for you? This has to do with Trump's campaign peeps' ties to Russia. This is a Russian interference in U.S. elections investigation. This ain't no expletive-deleted tax fraud investigation. Get your life together. Connect the dots. Remember how the left always likes to talk about conspiracy theories and we wear the tinfoil hats? Tell me that isn't the epitome, the absolute epitome of a tinfoil hat comment. Come on now. I've had, reactions from people saying that, if anything, this shows the greed and the ambition and the avarice of the Trump campaign in trying to get this information. And I agree. I totally agree. I absolutely agree. Yes, the Trump campaign was ambitious. Yes, they were greedy for information. Yes, they were all those things and more. But that doesn't mean they were criminal. I agree. The Trump campaign had, they were stupid in hiring Manafort. Absolutely. Who can disagree with that? I don't think anyone partisan can agree that Paul Manafort was a good choice for the Trump campaign. But you got to remember the context of it. You got to remember the context that this was a rudderless campaign at the time that had, delegates building up, but they weren't over the top yet. And they had someone take over for a delegate count. I also then looked at comments on the right on my various social media feeds. And I'm finding more contemplative comments, but also comments that seem to be celebrating that this has nothing to do with President Trump and his campaign, and they're kind of dismissing it. And I think that's a mistake as well. I think you can't dismiss this. You can't dismiss what is in the Papadopoulos statement of the offense as being just nothing. You can't dismiss now that there are two pieces of news out there that connect the Trump campaign to active looking, or if you want to call it passive looking, I guess you can say that as well, but looking for information on Hillary Clinton being sourced out of Russia. You can't ignore that there are now two instances of that. And in going forward with the campaign, there may be more instances to come. The question becomes coordination. Is there an effort from the Trump campaign to coordinate with foreign actors in interfering with the election? That's what it's going to come down to. That's a pretty high bar, in my opinion. I think that there are some people out there legally who are saying that. I think there are others out there who are trying to read between the lines, saying, will this lead to President Trump pardoning Paul Manafort? Will this lead to President Trump stopping the investigation and firing Mueller? I think both of those things are totally premature and totally out of left field at this point. Not to say left field is, where the left lives, but yeah, I guess I am kind of saying that. There are lots of questions out there to be answered. I just don't get the joyousness on either side. People out there saying, lock him up and commenting about President Trump. I'm trying to understand what is going on here. Someone said in response to my comments that to say that, there are no Trump ties to the campaign with Manafort, to put it another way, Trump's campaign manager was on Putin's payroll. That in and of itself is misleading. Because when you talk about on Putin's payroll, it's indirect, if anything, because it has more to do with a political party in the Ukraine that had the backing of Putin. So if you want to say that's on his payroll, fine. But the payroll ended around 2014. A full 2 years before Manafort was even involved with the Trump campaign. Now, I don't know about you folks, but I've been out of my law firm, the first law firm I was with, for over a year now. Well, close to a year and a half, actually. Does that mean that I can be said to be on the payroll of that law firm when I'm working for a new job? I don't think that that's correct. I think that's misleading and it's dishonest to even say that. You know what? It's one of these things where if you're looking at the reporting of what's going on, if you're really following it, and maybe this is the problem, if you're really following the reporting, you see that there is nothing new as far as news here to come up. That's the problem. I think people's memory I'm about to say the remembrance, pulling a George W. there. But I think people's memory, when it comes to these scandals, when it comes to the news cycle and the way we have to feed the monster that is this news cycle, is really becoming short. I guarantee you, after this news today, you're not going to remember what the big scandal was 2 weeks ago, or whatever it may have been. I bet you won't remember what was said a month ago, that's for sure. And I bet you have a vague remembrance of the Donald Trump Jr. emails from way back more than 2 months ago. That's the nature of the news beast these days. And by the way, I don't want to be one of those guys to do the, whataboutism stuff, but the other news breaking today that is not getting as much coverage is that another party said to be under investigation when it comes to Russian influence on our elections. On the Democrat side, Tony Podesta resigned from his firm today. Today being the day we're broadcasting this early in the week. That's a revelation in and of itself that's not going to get any news play whatsoever. You want to talk about cagey news awareness? There it is right there. Tony Podesta, who is deeply involved in the Fusion GPS matter and the other side, the so-called real Russian scandal, he just left his firm after 11 years. That's not getting any play right now. It's interesting that it's not getting any play, and it remains to be seen what any investigation results from that. But then, in talking about this whataboutism, there's this idea of when will President Trump pull the trigger on asking for a special investigation into Fusion GPS and the Silver dossier and all that. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, I'm talking about the funding of a dossier by a foreign national of England, I believe, Christopher Steele, who was paid, who worked for Fusion GPS, that was paid for by a big law firm. When I say big law, I'm using a technical term there. Big law being a large firm that takes in millions of dollars, called Perkins Cole, that paid Christopher Steele to come up with this dossier that has been debunked in part. The part about Trump partying with hookers and peeing on beds, P-gate and all that has been debunked and all that. But there are parts of it that supposedly weren't debunked. And there are parts of it which presumably and allegedly were used by the FBI in putting together the Russian collusion case against the Trump campaign at this point. There are questions on that side that have to be answered as well when it comes to foreign influence in elections. Again, the Hillary Clinton campaign and the DNC would say that this is opposition research. Well, what differs from that and what George Papadopoulos was doing in trying to do opposition research and getting quote-unquote dirt on Hillary? Wasn't the Fusion GPS dossier meant to get quote-unquote dirt on Donald Trump? Can't say one's out of bounds without saying the other's out of bounds. The question becomes, did Hillary Clinton know the dossier itself had Russian intel and references to government officials in Russia in it? If so, it's complete hypocrisy. And we need to be talking about criminal charges on the other side. At this point, to go on the offense on that is maybe tactically is the wrong move at this point. I know that Jeanine Pirro wants to go after it. And I've heard it mentioned by other people to say, well, why aren't we investigating Hillary and all this other stuff? And the point is, why would you want to do that at this point? If not to just be a defensive reaction to what may be an acknowledgement of damaging information. I don't think there's been any information that has come out thus far that is so damaging to the Trump presidency that would necessitate a change of tact and a try to do a misdirection and interference, an end round here, to talk about Fusion GPS. I think you can talk about both and both jobs be done properly, but I don't think one should be a reaction to the other. I was listening to Ben Shapiro earlier today, and far be it for me to quote the competition, but he raises a great point. Neither's acts justify the other's. If they were both wrong, we should call them out to be both wrong. But we shouldn't compare and say one is wronger than the other being wrong. It's not like that. It's not a zero-sum game. Each one has their own merits to their argument. Each one has their own facts, and they have to be dealt with individually. That's the way our justice system is supposed to work, right? We're not going to play whataboutism in the Justice Department. At least we shouldn't anyway. That's just my feeling on it. Maybe because I'm a lawyer and, I have to mention I'm a lawyer on every show, so there it is for you. Maybe it's because I'm a lawyer that I seem to gravitate towards the rule of law and not willing to speculate and go in between the lines of,